Here's my script. Could you read it?
Okay, yeah, and move that
Let's
script over
edit
here.
this part
Yeah.
out, okay? Going 10-1.
Rain dance, Sundance, con.
Let's do this.
You guys ready?
Quiet
Thank you
on
so
set.
much for this award. Ready and action.
Welcome back to Mel Moment Mondays. I'm your host, Mel, and today I'm joined with actor, musician, and filmmaker Perry Young. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mel. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
We briefly met at the Asian American Film Festival last month, and I just got to say, one, congrats on the music video. Very impressive, very
Oh,
moving.
wow.
And
Thank you
two,
so much.
yeah, oh my gosh. And two, you guys did an amazing job with the live performance. I know it was just like the crowd work was amazing and the message was amazing. And you guys are just like fun and so much energy on stage. So
Great, thank you. Well, the video was made with my band Judo Club. And so it's just, I played with Richard Ebhara, the singer, for over 30 years.
wow.
And then Jun Suenaga, who I've known for almost 30 years, but we've never played together until 2 years ago when we formed Judo Club. And then that night that you came was the debut of my son playing bass in the band and actually debut as his like a live musician in New York City. So it was quite a fun night for everyone.
That's fantastic. So like what got you into filmmaking in the first place? How did this all come about?
Right, right. So as an actor, I've been involved in film since 1993, I think is when I did my first film. And there was like nothing, right? Nothing for Asian Americans. So I really just stayed with theater. And then I had kids and I dropped out of theater for a while. And then when my oldest was old enough to be on his own, which was about, he was about 10, so that was 2013. I started to get the itch, right, to act again. And I thought, well, I can't go back to theater, so I would go to film or television because that way it would pay when I'm away from home. And I was lucky that I just kind of auditioned and started getting parts. So I've been involved in film as an actor since 2013, or actually seriously coming back into it at 2013. And I hadn't really thought about making a film, being the director or producer until the pandemic struck, right? And there was a lot of anti-Asian hate, and then and that combined with the actors and the writer's strike, there was just no work. And I was talking to my manager, Davian Littlefield, and she goes, now's a good time for you to sort of branch out and do something that, you haven't done yet in your field. And I went, what, this is the perfect timing for me to say something about Asian hate right now. And I thought I would put my sort of philosophy to work, which is, I think it's sort of like uh, love activism, I call it, where you enjoy your work and your work in activism change helps society. So I engaged with my community and did a Kickstarter, a fundraiser to raise funds to make this film. So I wanted to invite, because I was hearing online that my community just felt a little helpless also, like they couldn't do anything to stop what was happening in society. And I thought, as a grassroots effort, we can come together in an artistic way and you can make this film with me. So we raised $15,000, which I thought was, I didn't think I would, that's 3 times more than I thought. And it was just an amazing thing to be a part of, like this community that wanted change. And we all wanted to make this film together. So the community at large, and not just Asian Americans, but anybody who thought that they wanted to make a change with what was happening in society, um, came forth. And it was just an incredible experience. Yeah.
It's amazing how when tragedies happen, how communities come together and really try and just like communicate with each other and be stronger together. It's amazing to see, really. Yeah.
Yeah, that seemed to be something like I also experienced as something that is just human. When there's a tragedy, humans want to pitch in to help, right? So I just found the way for us to all be together with a shared goal, and that was just incredibly moving for me.
Yeah, I bet. So, did tell me about your experience like growing up, um, obviously Asian and navigating the world. Did you grow up here in the States? Did you grow up somewhere else? Was it in New York? Because now I think you're in New York, correct? Or was it
Correct.
somewhere else, like
I was the firstborn of my family in Chinese American from in California. I was born and raised in Oakland, California. the firstborn of my entire young clan, who actually my great grandfather came in the 1800s to build the railroads. But I didn't learn about all this until much later in school that he wasn't able to bring his sons over because of the Anti-Chinese Exclusion Act, right? And because of the Page Act earlier that banned Asian women from coming into the country in the 1870s, I never met my grandmothers. So women just didn't have the same way to migrate that Asian men did, who were, like basically one step above slave labor. So because of the laws, I was, four generations removed and being like consistent, migration or born here for four generations. So I always tell people I'm fourth and first generation. So being that I was born and raised in Oakland's Chinatown, and like a lot of Chinese American kids at that time in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, it was not a this was pre-model minority days, right? So this was like, gang violence. And I don't know if you know the history of San Francisco with the Golden Dragon shooting. And, that wasn't that different in the late 60s and 70s from other impoverished neighborhoods in America that are black and brown, and then when I think the model minority thing kicked in, we started to see a change because it was like, okay, so now there's opportunities for Chinatown kids to get jobs. There were no jobs before that, right? So now we can go to school, we can get jobs. Affirmative action kicked in better for Asians, right? Because we were sort of like the honorary whites, right? So we were like, and which is a dangerous thing to be, honorary whites, because then now we're the targets more than if anybody wanted to attack white people, they would attack us first, right? So, this is all systemic, divide and conquer. But growing up, I didn't know really any of that. I could only sense it, and I didn't have the language for it until I went to school and I studied Asian American studies. And I went, holy shit, this is all the stuff I've been feeling, but I was never able to verbalize until you study it from people who have studied it, and it's factual research. It's not just Facebook research, right? There's people who went to school and after PhDs and supported and fought for their PhDs to go into academia to teach this stuff. And I always tell people, I get this information because I had to learn from instructors who went through the rigorous training of studying history and having a more truth-based reality or reality-based truth. So, so it's not, there's just a lot to like sort of, then you just spend a long time contemplating this stuff on how to assimilate it as an artist, and how do you put it back out into the world. And so I've been fortunate, I think, to have some roles that actually that are more impactful for Asian Americans, because I feel like I'm a little more informed of the background, and I'm not just going to do something stereotypical. And if I'm cast in a role that's stereotypical, I'll fight to give that role more dimension. I don't know if that
Yeah.
was if I answered your question. I kind of went
No,
way
that's
out.
amazing. I mean, like funny enough, I grew up in Palo Alto in the Bay Area as
Oh
well. Obviously
wow.
not in the 70s or 80s, but yeah, it's just like very interesting growing up. And I'm definitely from a different generation, obviously, and it's interesting to hear how it was back then, and how, even though there might not be, you know, Asian gang violence or whatever, anymore in the Bay, there's still definitely kind of like roots of that racism and hardship still there, even though we are the quote unquote model minority now. It's just very interesting to kind of reflect, and it's also interesting that you studied this in college. I studied film, so nothing along the lines of any of my heritage, but I think it is really important, and it's interesting to hear that you bring kind of that history and the stuff that you learned into the characters, because I do feel like a lot of times, especially in roles that are of color, they kind of put you into one category, and it's like, okay, play this, but people have been playing that exact character for years and hundreds of years, like it's time to mix it up.
Absolutely. And we have opportunity today that we didn't have a few years ago even. And when the show I'm in that I'm very proud of, Warrior, started in 2017, there was nothing like it. And afterwards, then we have a few more shows like it, which is amazing, and more coming out, like Brother's Son, and, Interior Chinatown is coming out, and ABC on Disney, and all these shows are happening now, and they didn't happen before 2017. And so when first read the script, I went, oh my God, this is amazing. It really is about Chinese American history, and it centers the Chinese American experience based on racism. that's something that no other show delves into. So it was just it was a gift.
How was it like working on set? It's predominantly Asian, and you were playing Father John, I believe.
Mhm.
How was your experience on that set? Kind of being like, wow, this is like one of the first TV shows to really highlight this stuff. Like, did it feel special, or
Special is one of the words for it. It was a dream for an AAP an HBI actor to do a show that's centered on our voices. And even more so, it was written originally from one of my greatest heroes, Bruce Lee. So Bruce Lee was born in San Francisco, and when we grew up, he was the our hope. He was the guy that we looked up to and said, he made it. He got out of Chinatown. We can, it was, it was something that we can actually model ourselves after, although, what he did was so singular and incredible, but it was just a drop of hope to some little Chinatown kid with no hope, right? It's like, I can possibly do that. So to be in this show with Warrior, something that Bruce Lee started, is just an incredible gift, I feel. And also, I got to act one scene with Shannon Lee, his daughter. And so it was just like pinch me, right? I had to keep pinching myself. It's like, I can't believe this is happening. And plus, the work is amazing. The voice, how the show resonates for not just Asian Americans or Chinese Americans, but recently when I went to the a renaming unveiling of a Bruce Lee Way in Oakland, that was just last week, just by chance because I was in San Francisco doing a talk. I was once again reminded of how special that moment was because there were all these black and brown people right in Oakland there for the renaming. And you're going, Bruce Lee represents everyone with a dream to make it beyond what these systems do to us, right? The systems oppress us, especially people of color and women. So when you have a hero like that fighting the system for his community, which is the theme in all his films, everybody identifies with that. And I just remember so much of how Bruce Lee changed the culture. Because back then, I talked about how Chinatown wasn't so safe. It wasn't until Bruce Lee emerged, right, and made a splash, and then suddenly all these little kids like us who went to these downtown theaters who used to feel threatened were like rock stars. They started treating us like, oh man, you know that stuff too, and it was the excitement of Kung Fu being something empowering for not just Asians, but for everyone, was so palpable. It was thick in the air. You could breathe that sort of, the inspiration and power that he imbued upon us who are on the other side of the screen. So being a part of Warrior is just like a reminder of the power and legacy of Bruce Lee. That was 50 years ago when he wrote that script, when he first wrote Warriors, 5-0. That's a long time for something like that to germinate. And finally, society comes around to producing, or Hollywood comes around to producing it. So it's an incredible, unique show, and everyone involved is like family, not just the AA and HBI actors, but all the Caucasian actors are from Great Britain, the UK, and they're all like brothers and sisters. They're amazing, beautiful people. So I think it's just the power of Bruce Lee to bring people together, and we all knew like we're not going to mess this one up, or at least we're going to try really hard not to mess this up.
right? Was that the first time that you felt seen in a film as an Asian American? Would you say that would be the first time, or is there something else that you were like, okay, maybe I can make it in this industry and do something,
That was the first time that it was so clearly a voice of change and positive representation for Chinese Americans. I had done other roles where I thought, okay, I'm getting there, I'm inching there, right? And I'm pushing the envelope a little bit. There were situations in some shows where I had to like tell the director, that's kind of racist. I don't think you want to do that. And they were like, oh, really? So I'm happy to be a part of the change, to sort of educate them because oftentimes in television, I feel like they hired me because I'm the best person for the job. So I'm going to educate them because they don't know, right? So I feel like we were getting better slowly. For myself, this was the first time I felt truly like this one was just purely like inspiring. And I hope that little Asian kids or anybody that sees it is just going to be inspired and go, oh, that's not a stereotype because those are real people fighting for something.
Yeah. I just remember since I'm obviously a little bit younger and a different generation, but the when Crazy Rich Asians came out in
Mhm.
2017, for me that was kind of my aha moment, kind of the equivalent to the Bruce Lee of kind of a Gen Zer, as an Asian American, like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen myself on screen before. And obviously John M. Chu is a Los Altos native, and Palo Alto is very close to Los Altos. So it was just kind of like a
Mhm.
like one of those moments again where you're just like, I was getting into film at that point and applying to film school, and it just really kind of pushed me like, yes, this is what I should be doing, and this is, this is the right path that I'm taking.
That's awesome. And that's the power of art to be able to inspire us to like challenge us to see what we can do as individuals. Um, sorry. Crazy Rich Asians and Joy Luck Club. When those Joy Luck Club came out, it was another one of those. We got to look at Asian women in a way that we've never seen them before. Hollywood has never seen. I mean, to get into deep on their histories and their emotions and their dreams and their relationships and their, how society views them and everything was just another level of like we're finally getting there, right? But how long was it? Like 20 years between Joy Luck Club and Crazy Rich Asians, right? There were a few, indie films, Asian American films that were great, but like Justin Lin came out with The Better Luck Tomorrow in between that time, right? So everything is incremental and tiny. It seems like tiny little steps until you sort of, but the cumulative effect when we look at it is quite big. So to have the perspective of looking back and seeing how far we've come, even though at the moment sometimes we think, oh, we still have so far to go, right? But I'm always thinking, man, we've done so much since the time of like when I used to watch movies. I mean, I remember when Bertolucci's The Last Emperor came out with John Lone.
Wow,
It
yeah.
was nominated for every single Oscar except Best Actor and Best Actress, right? Everything. And those are the ones that were Asian, right? The roles. Everything else were non-Asian roles. So I remember thinking, even at that age, like, wow, they really threw us under the bus, you know? Look, they're just not going to acknowledge that the face of this movie isn't going to get an Oscar nomination, even. They were nominated to win. And that, so that was a huge blow. And then when Everything Everywhere All at Once won, I was like, oh my God, I never thought I'd see this day actually, where Hollywood would, because Hollywood is the biggest gatekeeper of America in terms of culture. And it's so important, right? Culture and representation, because it dictates and inspires, influences how we vote. So when we don't have the okay from Hollywood, we're silenced. But to finally see ourselves represented like in Crazy Rich Asians and Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I'm very excited for Interior Chinatown coming out on Hulu soon with Charles Yu, starring Jimmy O Yang and my very good friend Ronnie Chang and Tai Ma. So these are friends of mine. I think, oh my God, we're in there. With the secret or the challenge would be to keep our foot in the door, or not just keep it in the door, but to kick it open.
I love that. Uh, so like, you just had a film, in a music video in the Asian American Film International Film Festival. What was that like, for you to present that music video to a pool of people that are Asian and maybe not even Asian? What was that process for you making that film? Why did you make it? Kind of just explain the process and your emotions and feelings.
Yeah, first of all, when I set out to make the film, I didn't know if it would ever get accepted into any festivals, right? I thought I was just going to make the film with my community and my bandmates, and we had a song. And I'm just going to do what I always do, like just follow my heart and my intuition and see what happens with it, because I'm purposely anti-commercial. I'm purposely, anti-system. I want to create things that are more about the individual when they look at it and go, oh wow, that person doesn't work in a system. But as you start to collaborate, you realize that filmmaking is a very collaborative effort, and you have to agree with everyone that you're working with. The DP, the director of photography, is very important, and the editor is very important. And so I chose Asian American AAPI creatives. The film DP was Francisco Ali Wallace, who had films, I think, screened at many Asian American film festivals, and Sue Lee, who's an Asian American woman editor, works in television now. And I wanted them because I wanted their expertise on what is quality, right? So I wanted a certain quality level. And I wanted Sue's take, who's an Asian woman, on this um, film that is about Asian women, elders, and young being attacked. Mostly it was about Asian women, right? During the pandemic, um, the highest numbers of attacks were upon elders and Asian women, and all the Asian women I knew were like scared, and including Asian men, right? So I wanted that kind of collaboration to make sure I'm not um, triggering and traumatizing other people that are experiencing Asian hate and go, oh my God, we don't need this story told again. And what I found as we were shooting and talking about it, and with my collaborators, and I chose Teddy Yoshikami, who's one of the oldest Asian American women I know, who's in her 80s, born in a Japanese relocation camp. So she said, I mean, she's an artist, also an activist. And when I asked her to be a part of it, I knew that her face just had 80 years of America in her face, and she doesn't have to do anything. And she was, and so she agreed to be in the film. And it was just, her presence just did so much. And as I watched the film and I talked to Sue, it's really about letting society see us and feel us and not point fingers, because it's a quite complicated thing to stop Asian hate, right? It's a very, it's a systemic thing. It's racial, and it's also not, at the same time. It's a very complicated thing that I can't tell in, a few minutes. But if I show society as who we are and I touch their hearts in an empathetic way, that is I think, the most powerful thing that to me art can do, is to reach out and say, hey, look, I'm like you know and to do that in a short time with just music and imagery, some lyrics. So the challenge was, how do I get people on our side? And it really was about showing them who we are, what our dreams are, and what our hopes are. And it was about community coming together to acknowledge that we all have to be in this together.
I love that. We're all in this together at the end of the day. Um, yeah, so what do you think, what do you hope people take away from your film, from other films like it? You kind of touched upon kind of having it resonate with people, but on a large, like especially in this day and age, how do you hope it kind of creates discussions to help with laws, to legislation, or anything of that kind on a broader scale, internationally maybe? I don't know, like.
Yes, absolutely everything you said. But actually, I want to go back to your previous question before I answer that, because I forgot to say that I had been a part of the ACV's workshops since when I first moved to New York in 1991. So it's sort of like an organization I felt very close to. And then I've been in films as an actor, in the last 30 years, presented by AAIFF. So finally, to be a filmmaker, a director in that moment, that night, with the music video performances with all the other actors, all the other filmmakers, was quite amazing, because I got to see how much talent there is, and it's quite inspiring. And I keep getting inspired by younger people, which it's very humbling. That's wonderful. But to answer your question now is, I'll just tell the story about what happened that night. So my son is in the film. My oldest son, who's trans, is in the film, and he appears trans, I think, in the film. If you watch and go, wait, is that person a boy or girl? He comes to sit down, and that's part of our community, right? We have part of the message is we have to come together to support everyone in our community. You're right. So even our, especially our trans members, and then my other younger son was a bass player. So all their friends came, and they're all under 20. and that was a bar. Drama's a bar, right? So you have to be 21 to get in. So I was at the door all night with a couple of with the manager who was getting really like kind of pissy, like I can't let another someone in under 21. You're responsible. Like every time I got another friend in, there were like maybe 20 people of their friends. She kept going, "You're responsible. If they drink and I lose my license, I'm gonna, you're the," and she was being such a pain. I was going, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm dealing with her as I'm trying to do my show, right?" Um, she kept reminding me, right, every time I sat down, you keep an eye on them, right? They're not drinking, right? And I was like, don't worry about it. I'll be responsible. So by the end of the night, after the show, we're leaving, and she comes up and go, "You made that film, that Stop Asian Hate film. Where can I donate money? Here's my IG. Just send me a message. I want to donate. Where can I send my money?" And so that is the power of art, right? Like she just for to change her mind about us. I don't know what she was thinking, but she was doing her job. But for her to see that we're making a difference and she could be a part of it, and that she felt safe enough or close enough to come to me after she'd been giving me all that crap to say, how can I donate money? I mean, so that is the kind of people, that is the kind of power that art has, is that we can change people's minds and hearts just like that with the right intentions, and we can actually raise money. And so I got her to donate money to the Asian American Foundation, TAF, who is one of the organizations that came about, that rose during the anti-Asian hate rise, because the community came together to say we need sort of a huge umbrella organization like we don't have the NAACP like Black people have. So I think TAF is kind of now that organization that unites all these different disparate AA orgs, Asian American organizations across the country to say we can fight systemic hate together.
That's amazing. I mean, I didn't even know about TAF, so that's good for me to know. But I just think it's so cool to see kind of the community starting to build upon itself in the creative aspects, and really being like this, it's time to do something, and creating those resources if there isn't one, creating one for people to, stand behind and get active and fight for their beliefs.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I didn't think that I always believe that we can do things at the grassroots levels with like music. You could just form a band, right? Three chords and you could change the world, right? Punk rock and rock and roll, or a theater, make a theater group and you could perform. There's a lot of my inspirational theater groups are very grassroots, and they just make work that they can perform on the streets, and people, and it'll affect people just because they walked into suddenly a performance on the streets. I didn't think you can do that with film because it costs money, and the kind of time and collaboration and organization that it takes with film to come together. I mean, in a way that's very professional, like how Hollywood or film school would have you make a film. But in actuality, there's a lot of ways to make a film these days, especially with crowdsourcing and the right collaborators and the tools, right? You have an iPhone now, and even Steven Soderbergh made a film with his iPhone, and many other people. So there are so many ways that you can actually be creative um, and sort of hone your own voice without the traditional boundaries of money to sort of shape your voice.
Right. What do you think is your opinion on having more diverse sets? Because I know like back in the days, it was it still is very much a white man's game on a film set, but it's really awesome to see in these more modern times having film sets that have people from all over the world, all different races, genders, sexualities, all of it. How do you think that affects the films and creating films that positively reflect their own audience?
I think it has a huge effect on the final work. I think it's amazing how different and sets look these days, right? PAs, grips, electricians, everything. They're very different. I mean, I just shot a film and I can't wait till it comes out with Katarina Zhao, who wrote a film about a mother, sorry, a daughter and father who comes together after many years of estrangement, only to have a short moment before to really connect and reconciliate. But it's a beautiful story about coming back together. and it was mostly a female crew, and female DP, female PAs, and first assistant directors and everything, assistant directors and producers, costume, hair and makeup. Everyone except, some of the, electricians, I think were women. And it was really an incredible vibe because everyone believed in the film. And probably as a filmmaker, you know how difficult and stressful it is to work every day because there's so many things to think about. But when you have the support, the genuine, friendly support of people around you who want to see you do well, who want to see the art um, be successful, on many levels, it's food, it's nutrients, it's food for you to like constantly um use and grow and work, because it's tiring. Making a film is 18-hour days or whatever, but to have that support and genuine love around you it's really important. And yeah, especially with the shift in culture, and when you have the right crew, especially someone that's all women, or it could be black on African American film sets, right? There's a lot of black people these days because they see the disparity in the professional world, and so like we need to change the culture. We need to hire people like us so that we can get into the system. Warrior was filmed in South Africa, and it's an incredible vibe because all the crew were mostly black South Africans, very talented people who are given a shot in a very exclusive world of filmmaking. And just the energy that they give back because they appreciate where they are makes your job better and easier and funner. And I think it's a dream if you can live like that.
Yeah, no, it's just amazing. Like I'm so happy that I'm able to grow up in a time where this is happening. It's happening. The change
It
is
is
happening.
happening.
Yeah.
It is. It's amazing. I can feel it. It's so palpable. I mean, it's and I say this, we have so many opportunities today, although we can't forget how the struggle is still real, but to enjoy the struggle right now, we can actually enjoy the struggle.
I know you also obviously you also act Warrior through Body Problem. You also, I think I was looking up your IMDb, whatever it is. John Wick. You also did John Wick in there somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. I was at the my scene didn't make it into the theatrical release because
Oh
the
no.
film was going to it was getting too long. I saw the opening with when they released it with that was an invited cast, and Keanu Reeves was there, everyone was there. And at the very end of the film where my scene was, I was thinking, "Oh my God, it's getting so long. They're gonna cut me." And then it did. And then the director Chad Stahelski ran up to me directly after the film ended and said, "I'm so sorry, Perry. I meant to tell you before the film started that your scene wasn't in the film, but it's supposed to be in the DVD. So whoever gets the
Oh.
DVD, which I haven't seen yet, it's in the DVD. I
Okay,
play the
everyone, go
doctor.
buy the DVD.
Yeah, I'm
See
the
Perry.
doctor. There's a famous character that's the doctor of the Assassin's Hotel, and I play the second movie's doctor.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
so fun.
yeah, it was really fun. It was it's always fun shooting something like that. Um,
Yeah.
and Keanu Reeves is one of my heroes. So
Oh my gosh. Yeah. He's amazing. Another person that I talked to also worked with Keanu, and he just had such great things to say about him. Like, just nicest guy, obviously super talented, just fun. Fun
mhm.
sets. Also, he's just on fun sets always. So,
Yeah, yeah, he knows how. I mean, yeah, if I could have a career like that. He's a
so
musician
you
also, right? He plays music.
Yeah.
He's got
So,
a
and
band,
you also play music. So you
right?
act, you play music. In what ways do you think your performance or purpose behind your craft changes when, creating a song versus, bringing out a character or directing something such as your Asian hate music video, or does it change? Is your motivation behind it all kind of the same?
Oh, that's a great question. Your last statement about does your motivation change? I mean, I think that music is a huge tool, right, that people can use in many different ways. It's something like art that you can experience in many different ways. So if you're an artist, you can use art in many different ways. You can experience it in different ways, and music is just like that. I could say that, in my youth growing up, it was a tough time. I was an at-risk youth. I was, one step away from being, incarcerated, but music saved my life. Music saved my life because it gave me a different avenue of something to get into, something to be, aspire to, something to do. And just a simple thing of buying a guitar at that time, pre-internet, right? Buying a guitar and looking at rock and roll magazines and looking how cool these dudes are and go, oh man, I want to be like that one day, I want to tour around the country, the world and play in stadiums and it looks like they're having so much fun, right? I want to do that one day. And it wasn't about money or fame or anything. It was just so fun. So I picked up the guitar and, like I found that that became my best friend. And it wasn't even about trying to be in a band, trying to write songs, but it was just like having this thing in your hand, hitting a chord and feeling the power of this music. And just, it's so soothing to the heart. And it just kind of like, lowers the stress level. And I knew that as a 14-year-old when I first started. And so when over the years, when I started to play with bands and everything, it became a thing like, oh, people use this in so many different ways. Like, how am I going to use this? Because this is like, I don't want to like ruin it for me. Like, I don't want it to become like how a lot of people say, once you get to be known as something, you can't do it anymore because there's no fun anymore. And, like artists are constantly like pigeonholed and say, I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I didn't want to do that. So I just stayed sort of like in the underground, right? So if there's no commercial success, you're not doing it for the money.
Right.
So so I played guitar like that for a long time, and then I ended up when I moved to New York, forming Slant, the theater group, and I one thing I wanted to do with theater was make it exciting, because a lot of theater I was seeing was kind of boring. I could fall asleep, and like, I want to make theater exciting. So Slant was a group that played music also. So we were like a garage band theater group, and it was with two other Asian American guys, so we were like, AAPI guys doing music, AAPI music, and theater. And that became really fun because we were sort of on the same page about writing these songs that tell our stories. So the first song that we wrote, Slant, in 1995 was We're Not the Model Minority. And it was like this grunge rock song that came out at the same time as Nirvana, right? This whole sound of grunge. And we're like, that's what the song sounds like. Grunge. We're not the model minority, And we're just screaming it out, banging these, distorted guitars. And that's how we opened the show, right? In 1995. It was great. We had so much fun. So it becomes useful in many different ways. And so the motivation does change, right? But during my time with Slant, I also was really getting into what Asian American performance and ideology was in terms of practice. Because if we're Asian American and grunge is part of that, and using English was part of that, what's the Asian part of that? And my other cohorts was Richard Ebahara, who also plays in Judo Club, is Japanese American, who's fifth generation Japanese American, and Waylon Quintero, who is second and third generation, I believe, from Hawaii through Japanese and Filipino parents. And so we had a similar feeling of who we are, but we didn't, we were all basically, we grew up in America. So we're Americans, right? Eurocentric based, Asians. And I wanted to do something, a practice that was Asian. So I was looking at Asian instruments to bring into it, and I discovered the flute, the bamboo flute. I'm like, what more quintessential music is there other than, for Asian American Asians? It's the bamboo flute. So in my research, I finally came across the shakuhachi, the Japanese bamboo flute, and I was completely hooked. And that took me to Japan. It sort of sidetracked my theater work. I ended up studying with a master in Japan. This was all pre-internet. I'm sorry, the making part was pre-internet for me in New York. I found a Japanese American musician who I studied with, and then when I went to Japan, it was the beginning of the internet. So I started to, learning more about Japanese culture and the music. And then I brought that back to Slant, and it was the shakuhachi came from the Zen temples of Japan, centuries ago, and it's about meditation. So that world of the sound of the bamboo flute changed my concept of music. Again, is something that is just meditation. It can move you without you knowing it if it's just part of the scene, part of reality. And I realized that's why the soundtrack music is so powerful because you don't know what's happening. but it's influencing you, you know? And so that's how I started to use the shakuhachi also. And that is a very spiritual practice for me. And somehow it's now coming into like a bigger world because I just did a soft launch of some shakuhachi music I wrote and I put it on Spotify because people kept asking me for the last 20 years, when are you going to release some shakuhachi music? And I thought if I don't get to it now, I'm just never going to do it. So I'm doing a slow, soft launch of that. So yeah, music, and that's basically just to get people to hear another kind of sound that people associate with me. They think, yeah, this judo club or it's pretty big, in your face kind of things that I do. But actually, this meditation world of the bamboo shakuhachi is very different and is actually very healing. It could be a very healing, supportive thing that a practice that someone could engage in.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're either, I feel like for me, thinking explicitly about music, or it's very subconscious. And as you said, especially like kind of tying it into film, like specifically, there's like music has so much to do, and sound has so much to do with what you're seeing on screen, and can really change the tone, change the meaning. um so yeah, I think it's cool that you've incorporated other types of music into your own life, kind of like broadening, I guess, yourself as well as the communities around you. Do you have like kind of like your role model of Bruce Lee? Do you have a specific band or
Mhm.
song that you kind of look up to, or think has made an impact in this world? Or
Yeah, well, in terms of rock and roll, I think Jimi Hendrix is a person that really influences me because of just his virtuosity and his individual voice through the guitar, right? It's just so unique. It's like so singular, and what he represents for people of color in a sort of a white dominated world, and the what he has gone through to break down the barriers and become who he is just so iconic in the same way that Bruce Lee is. And it turns out they both have the same birthday. Bruce Lee and Jimi Hendrix, right?
oh my
So
gosh.
it's incredible, right? And then I realized after some point time in researching Jimi Hendrix and why he wears those kimonos is that because his mother-in-law is Japanese, not mother-in-law, stepmother is Japanese, and so his half sister is half Japanese, and she runs the Jimi Hendrix Foundation right now. So there's a Asian connection with Bruce Lee, which is amazing, and Seattle, where he's from. But so I would say Bruce Lee and Jimi Hendrix and rock and roll. But the other side, in terms of the shakuhachi, I would say my teachers in New York. One is Ralph Samuelson, who was one of the first Americans to go to Japan in the 70s to study shakuhachi. And then my Japanese teacher, Kinya Sogawa, who is one of the most prolific, I wouldn't say prolific, maybe the better word is just respected craftsman and professional musician. So he's one of the two of the old world in the past where you had to be the flute maker and player. And now today in the shakuhachi world, you're either a great player or a great flute maker. Very few people are both. So Kinya Sogawa in Japan is sort of my mentor and hero that, if I can make and play as good as him and play as good as my teacher here, Ralph Samuelson in the US, because they have a sound, right? It's just because, when you blow into a bamboo flute, you're just blowing into a piece of grass that dried, basically. A stalk of a bamboo. The sound that comes from it is mesmerizing and life-changing. And it comes from the person that put that sound into this stem, into this dried stem. It's just kind of mind-blowing. So I always look at my flutes and go, oh my God, this thing changed my life. It's a piece of grass.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I only play guitar, and that's very minimal these days. But yeah, that's just cool. Like I flute, and just kind of going back to like the origins of it, and craft. It's above me, really.
But if you play guitar, just because you just sit and strum a chord and it just changes, right?
Yeah, no, there's a
It just
feelling behind
changes.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. It changes you, it changes the audience, it changes your stress levels at that moment. Once you hear a sound, you have this instrument. It's just one chord and one tone of the thing changes everything. It's amazing.
It is crazy how kind of the the music and the spiritual side of it can affect you.
Hmm.
It's really cool. And and
Hmm.
and you're such an artist in so many ways. It really just it's just amazing and cool, and oh my gosh. What ways do you wish to convey not only to the Asian American community, but maybe someone who's a little bit more ignorant about the Asian American community and their story, in films and music and all of that? What do you what do you hope to educate or inspire or just people in general?
Yeah, art, I think it just comes down to what can art do for someone, right? And what level are you making the art, are you making your art accessible to everyone, or are you making a sort of an elitist kind of art where you have to study and go to art school to appreciate it? I'm not of that, mentality. I would say again, look, I would say for my work, it comes from these two mentors that I have in New York and Bruce Lee. So Fred Ho, who had passed away 10 years ago of colon cancer, was a Chinese American activist musician who used his music to change society. It's called Fred Ho and the Afro Asian American Art Ensemble, and they wrote jazz operas telling stories of the people of color and women to empower us and unify us against systemic hatred, right? So he had a singular voice, and that's what all his music was based on. All his work was about taking down white supremacy and systemic and systems and capitalism. And he did it with the most beautiful music, right? And artistry and virtuosic music and storytelling. And then there's Corky Lee, who is a photographer, and his work is so different, or his approach is so different because he just shows the community, and that affects people, right? This doesn't have it has nothing to do with Corky's face or voice. You look at a picture and you go, "Oh, that changes me," right? And that's how Corky approached it. Then uh, I go to Bruce Lee for how his films affected everyone, and I go back to how I was affected as a kid, sitting in a downtown theater in Oakland, California, where there's only four of us from Chinatown and the rest are all black, right, from the next neighborhood, and everyone's cheering on Bruce Lee, right? And and you go as that little kid going, he did something for us, And those guys, everyone in here cheering, they don't care whether it's about AAPI stories or anything. There's something about what he's doing that reaches us at the fundamental level of desire and need for something. And Bruce Lee did that. And so did, Corky and sort of Fred Ho, and in different ways. So I always look to them and go, well, how would Fred do this moment? You know? And I also have to mention my theater mother, Ellen Stewart of La Mama Theater, who took me under her wings in the 1993, and I became part of a theater company, and she brought me all over the world touring every summer. And she said, this will teach you what it's like to be an American artist, because you start to think, what is your voice? Because there's all these people out there in the world. Are you only speaking to Americans? And so that showed me something very unique about a kind of, I don't want to say universal, but what is the fundamental thing that makes us human? And you know, that's a question I think I'll be asking myself a lot in my work. Did I get to that fundamental thing that makes me human and somebody else? And did that shift society for the better?
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's hard for me to even comment off of that. I think it just like thinking about, as you said, what makes us human. When it really comes down to it, there's so many labels to put people in boxes and stuff, but at the end of the day, we are all human and we all kind of share a similar basic needs, basic wants, and trying to grasp onto that to make it more accessible to everyone, like you could, you do cater to a certain, group, obviously, like an Asian group or whatever it may be, but at the end of the day, like trying to find something that's human and humanitarian and stuff like that, can really bring the masses to your work and to really inspire and find.
That was it's a very important thing. As I'm just speaking to you, I'm realizing that the thing that makes us human actually is, like, we're hungry, You know, we cry, we laugh, you know, it's something that babies do, right? Babies are born crying or laughing, and that's something every human does, right? But when you start to put words into it, we start to separate. The humans are separated by language, right? Then you can't say things are universal if you say this in this language because another culture doesn't speak your language, and there's so many different meanings and different words, even if you speak the same language, right? So we get down to the non-language and what is it, and that's why music and imagery and representation is so important in cinema, right? When the camera moves a little bit, the audience can feel it, and then the music comes up slowly, and you see the look in someone's eyes that all touches us in such a profound way that's beyond words. And I think that when I saw, for example, in Warrior, like my character, Father June, is this, Chinatown Tong leader. He can't just be that. He has to be something that touches everyone who sees this film. So I have to bring in the father aspect more of he's a father, right? So anybody who sees it, oh yeah, he's the dad that we are afraid of. And then also like he's the dad that wants something from his son, like, and I brought in like, who is he outside of Chinatown? What would someone else be like? So I have to like make comparisons. He's like Malcolm X. He's fighting for his people in Harlem because he loves his people, and white people are coming at them with nooses to lynch them. How is he going to fight them off with, he really loves his people, but he's against systemic racism, right? So all these things are like I'm bringing into like to make Father June a bigger character that people can like and root for, even though he's the villain in some ways, right? So I think it takes a lot of. I'm not saying that I'm a great actor or anything. I'm just saying that I have because of music and a background of coming from somewhere that I need something is that I'm going to investigate more when I have the opportunity to investigate to not waste the opportunity.
Perfectly said. Like it's
And
just
I'm
like
still
wise words coming out of you every 2 seconds. I'm
I'm
like, oh my God.
constantly investigating. I'm
Yeah,
constantly investigating because this world is so interesting, and we think we
it
know
is.
something,
Yeah.
but when you step away from it a week later, a month later, a year later, you realize how much you missed, right? So I don't want to miss anything when I have an opportunity, although I will, but I'm going to do my diligent, research
Right.
and have
Oh,
fun.
such a good outlook. Kind of to just mix it up a little bit, make it a little bit more fun. We're now going to play the film Would You Rather. So just like one question. So my question for you is, would you rather have worked on Crazy Rich Asians or Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Everything everywhere all at once. Oh, do I need to
For
say
what
why?
reasons? Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's just because it fits my not fitting into the system. Whereas Crazy Rich Asians is a rom-com. You don't really know what everything everywhere all at once is. And it's so many different things, right? So it doesn't really fit. It's not easy to explain, but it reaches you and it makes you think. Makes you think of like, I didn't get that, but I will one day if I think more about it.
Yeah, no, it's so having everything everywhere all at once when
Yes,
so many awards and the publicity and just kind of the heart of it all was just really awesome to see and yeah, just the complexity of it. I had the first time I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, that's good. And then I rewatched it, I was like, oh no, wait, that's really good. That's really deep. Like it's one of those where you can keep watching and watching it every single time you'll pick something new out and like take something new away from that film, you know.
absolutely, absolutely. And while I was watching it, I kept going, what the heck why are they doing this? And it was
It is
great because it was
absurd. Yeah.
challenging me as
Yeah.
a viewer, right? But it was entertaining. It was very entertaining too. So it wasn't just like heady, for people who like theory in film and things like that. It was just entertaining.
Yeah. It's a great combo of a bunch of different things. It is everything.
Hmm.
And then kind of to just wrap this whole thing up, my final question would be for you. If you could tell your younger self, what advice would you give them, starting out in the film, in music, in life, navigating this crazy world in America? Like what would you tell them?
Um, enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself because life is short. Don't worry about it. Like there's a lot of because this systems, the things that guide our beliefs in society are made to corral us. That you shouldn't hold those things that important. Is that there are boundaries to freedom actually, and that if you just live following your bliss and building community, building your friendships, building strong friendships of support, um, and find a purpose where you feel like you're serving your community, it'll be okay.
Wise words. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I just, yeah.
I know that's easier said than done because today in America, it's so hard to pay your rent. It's so hard. I couldn't move here now if I were to move here. I moved here in 91 and I was able to work a part-time job and share an apartment and it was doable. And I was able to do art and not work full time because that's what I was committed to. I don't see anyone doing that now because I think it's impossible, but I hope it's possible to just try to like not think about money and just think about enriching your life.
No, that's I feel like that's so important, especially for I feel like younger people kind of navigating this world more newly.
Mhm.
And they're so caught up with like, oh, what ifs, and I mean, I feel like everyone at a certain age is, and the money and everything, but kind of just in enjoying it while you're young. Like I feel like that's something I have to keep telling myself too, is like, oh, when I
Mhm.
get caught up in kind of just like life's like dilemmas, kind of stopping myself and being like, okay, but I do have it pretty good, and I should enjoy this, even if it is rough right now.
Absolutely. If you have your health, that's like number one, right? And then your health is like also mental health, right? So if you can pay attention to those things all the time, eat well and consume healthy things in your mind and develop again community, a loving community, with shared goals, I think you'll be golden.
Well, thank you so much for coming on this podcast, and it's really meant a lot to me, and you were just the perfect person to talk about this subject and dive deep into it, and you just had such great insights throughout. So, thank you again.
Oh, thank you, Melanie. Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Where can people find you, follow you on social media?
Um,
Where can they
yeah,
go?
yeah. So Perry Young official on Instagram would be the best place.
All right. Awesome. I'll link that down below in the description. And yeah, just thank you again.
Thanks so much, Melanie.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to learn more about my experience as an up and coming filmmaker or catch up on more episodes, follow me on Instagram at MELYDE12. This podcast is also available on Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Please like, subscribe, and spread the word. Thank you guys again, and that's a wrap.